Welcome to the Note Nuggets podcast, where you can learn how to become the bank, build wealth, and accumulate streams of income perfect for your savings or IRAs. You'll hear from industry experts, seasoned veterans, and everyday investors. Our goal is to teach you how to invest in notes, one nugget of knowledge at a time. Here's your host, Kevin Galang.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Note Nuggets podcast, where each week you learn how to turn other people's debt into income for your savings or IRA. One of the first investing books I ever read was the famous Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. For those of you who might be unfamiliar with the book, Robert Kiyosaki documents his time growing up with two different dads. His actual father, the poor dad, was an academic and is used to represent a lot of the typical quote-unquote American dream ideologies and choices that I'm sure we've all been marketed to. His rich dad, who was more of Kiyosaki's mentor, wasn't highly educated, but was a successful businessman. I recommend this book for anyone who is interested in taking their finances seriously because it does a great job of simplifying key financial concepts in an entertaining way. One of the main concepts you will learn from the book is the difference between assets and liabilities. An asset is an investment that you acquire that provides you a return on your investment, like a note or a rental property. On the other hand, a liability is a purchase that costs you money to own or does not add any financial value to your life, like a car or a TV. Technically, going out to eat is a liability, but food is also a necessity and food is delicious, so I'm going to let that one in particular slide. When it comes to investing, the goal is to acquire assets. These assets will grow your money for you and your family. The goal of investing in assets is to produce income, and with enough assets producing enough income, you will no longer have to work. Now, doesn't that sound nice? Welcome to the holy grail of investing. Passive income. Income that requires the least amount of work for the greatest amount of return. Some call it lazy. I call it investing. So how can you achieve passive income with notes? Well, this episode is all about 3 passive profit strategies you can achieve with notes. The most passive way to acquire passive income is to be a passive investor of notes. The term quote-unquote passive investor gets thrown around a lot in the real estate space, so let's distinguish the difference between a passive and an active investor. An active investor is someone like me who is actively speaking with note sellers, networking with other investors, building relationships with industry experts, and analyzing deals. On the other end of the spectrum, a passive investor is someone who invests in a deal that an active investor brings to them and sits back and lets their money grow. By the virtue of being a passive investor, all of your profits are passive. Of course, you didn't turn into this week's episode for that obvious definition, so let's talk about different note deals passive investors can get involved in. There's 2 ways passive investors can remain passive. The first is by investing in something like a note fund or a mortgage real estate investment trust. This would be akin to investing in a mutual fund or an index fund. However, instead of buying into securities of companies, you're buying into the investment of mortgage notes. For each of the funds or real estate trusts that you select, you'll have a team of note investors who buy, work out, and sell mortgages that will pay you a return on your investment. There are nuances to both of these, which I'll cover in another episode, but for the sake of simplifying them, think of them like investing in a mutual fund or an index fund. And again, instead of investing in ownership of companies or corporations, your money is funding the purchase and selling of a variety of performing and non-performing mortgages. The second way a passive investor can stay passive is by partnering up with an active investor like myself directly. The active investor will find the note that fits the passive investor's criteria, complete the due diligence and analysis, and then execute the purchase and work out of the note. The passive investor typically will be the financial person in this type of a partnership, funding the deal while letting the active investor handle the active portion of the note investment. It's really a symbiotic relationship. This type of partnership can be done for both performing and non-performing notes. It's how I've done my last few notes. So it's not uncommon to have that type of relationship with other investors, with your passive or active where somebody is effectively funding the deal and the other person is doing the heavy lifting. The next two ways to create passive profits with notes involve performing notes. Performing notes, by their nature, are passive. As long as the borrower continues to pay their monthly mortgage payments, you're golden. The first way to get involved with performing notes is to buy one on the secondary market from other investors, hedge funds, note brokers, or banks. When you buy a performing note, you assume the position of the lender, and the borrower will pay you the monthly mortgage amount that they were paying their previous lender. And as a new lender, you'll have all the benefits of being the bank. No maintenance, low tenant turnover, security through the asset, especially if you are in the senior or first position, and most importantly, that passive monthly income. It really is that easy. Rinse and repeat, and with enough performing notes, you could achieve financial freedom. Doesn't that sound nice? The last strategy for today's episode is to originate a performing note. Growing up in California, where the 2021 median home price is over $700,000, I thought all mortgages and notes cost something similar. I don't know many people that have $700,000 sitting in their checking, savings, or IRA to originate a note of that size. The good news is that when you originate a note, it doesn't have to be that high. In fact, in my self-directed IRA, I originated 3 performing notes, 2 at $15,000 and 1 at $55,000. So it doesn't take a fortune to originate a note. And like a performing note that you would buy on the secondary market, as long as the borrower is paying their principal and interest payment, there's really no work for you to do. You sit back, relax, and enjoy the return on your investment. So that's it. 3 different ways that you can create the holy grail of investing. Passive income with notes. If you want to learn more about how I've structured my previous deals in my IRA, or how I purchased performing notes on the secondary market, or if you need help with your due diligence or any types of questions with regards to how to invest in notes, book a time on my calendar at notenuggets.com/contact. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Note Nuggets podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get access to additional weekly value nuggets and get notified with episode updates. To subscribe, all you have to do is head over to subscribe.notenuggets.com. If you have any questions about this episode or note investing, book a time on Kevin's calendar at contact.notenuggets.com. We'll see you next week with another note nugget to add to your tool belt.